Alright everyone, so I wanted to make this video just to give you an update and let you know what's going on as far as my current legal battle. So I wanted to first start off with giving a recount of everything that basically how it took place as far as the incident and my unlawful arrest. So on March 23rd, 2021 this year, I was attending a car show with some friends of mine. I was sitting with some friends of mine in the show, and basically what happened is I was parked at a different location from where I was sitting, and where I was parked there was some other friends of mine who just wanted to play a practical joke on me, as far as I had a car model toy on top of my car. One of them took it away, put it on their car, took a picture and sent it to me, just horseplaying around. So I basically got up from where I was at. I walked down there to where they were parked, just to merely, chit-chat a little bit, spend a little time with them for a minute. And as I was there, just talking with a friend of mine, I also noticed someone who claimed to be the property manager was walking around and, furious, looking for, I guess, a couple of people who was flying drones, taking merely videos and pictures of the show. Very common, happens all the time, every show that I've been to. And so nonetheless, he identifies one of the persons flying this drone, happens to be a buddy of mine. He walks over to him because he sees the remote control in his hand. He asks him to put the drone away, to land it right away, and he's calling the cops. I don't know why the guy was so agitated in the first place, but nonetheless, I didn't have anything to do with it. I was merely just there chit-chatting with a friend of mine. But my buddy put his drone away anyway, so I didn't think that there would even be anything further. But nonetheless, the guy walks away, decides to call the sheriff's department, and a few minutes later, the sheriff shows up. Now, I'm still just standing nearby talking to a friend of mine. Now the sheriffs are on scene, and they actually walk up to where we are, and they say that all the guys with Corvettes have got to go. So I asked a couple of brief questions, because it didn't make any sense to me. Like I said, I hadn't done anything. I wasn't the one flying the drone. Property manager never said anything to me. Security never spoke to me. Nothing. So the first encounter I have is sheriffs merely walking up saying, I gotta leave. So I asked them a couple brief questions, a couple reasonable questions. They were adamant about the fact that all of us needed to go. So we all said, okay, fine, no problem. We'll pack up and leave. The sheriff asked that we gathered our belongings and that we vacate the property. So that's just what we did. As I began to walk away to go gather my belongings, I notified my passenger and reached out to my friend via text, letting them know that I was leaving, that we were no longer welcome on the property, as I was walking to go gather my chairs and my belongings further down in the show where I was originally seated. As I was walking there, and as I got to my chairs, I paused for a brief moment just to, as my passenger and everything was on the way to join me, help me gather everything and return back to my vehicle, place to get my belongings into my vehicle so we could leave. The sheriff decides to walk down and place me under arrest. I asked him merely what was he doing, what was he placing me under arrest for. He said he was arresting me for trespassing. I explained to the deputy that I wasn't trespassing, that I did exactly what he asked for me to do. I never refused to leave. I actually made it clear to him that I'm leaving. But the deputy was not interested in hearing anything. He was merely interested in just making an arrest and hauling me off. So that's what he did. As he takes me to the patrol vehicle, goes to book me into the patrol vehicle, he does a pat down and search of me, and he does an extremely poorly and incompetent search. He basically reaches into my pocket, secures all my property in my pockets, my phone, my cell phone, my wallet, my keys, all that stuff, and then decides to put me into the vehicle. Needless to say, I'm merely, wearing a shorts and t-shirt on a summer day, on a very warm day, and the deputy, because they conducted such a poor search, failed to secure my concealed carry firearm on my hip that I was carrying. So at this point, now I was absolutely disgusted with the behavior, the poor training, the incompetence of the deputies, and their whole attitude and demeanor, how they mishandled the entire situation. I requested to merely speak to a sergeant. So the deputies drove me to the jail 30 minutes away and parked behind the jail, leaving me in the vehicle for over 4 hours while we waited for the sergeant to arrive. Once the sergeant arrived, I explained to the sergeant very, calmly as to what all had took place. And I explained to him that I was in fear of my life from his 2 poorly trained deputies who couldn't even conduct a proper pat down and search of me, securing my concealed carry firearm in the proper way, putting my life in danger, as well. And so the sergeant merely removed me out of the vehicle, secured my firearm. I asked him to do so in a safe manner. I asked the sergeant, was his body cam and all this stuff recording and rolling, because I wanted to make sure it was all going to be captured on film. I knew later that I would FOIA these all the body cam footage and all that. So now where we stand is about a month or so after the arrest took place. I had to hire an attorney, of course, to defend myself against this criminal misdemeanor, which was, and should have never taken place anyways. It was unlawful, and they should have never made the arrest. But needless to say, the state's attorney's office dropped the case and declined to prosecute the case against me. So now that the defensive part is out of the way, that opens up for me to go after the department and those involved civilly, now that I can go on the offensive here. So basically that's briefly what all the what happened within the case. And so I've uploaded some of the body cam footage. You guys can take a look at it and let me know what you think. Thank you. Alright, you guys, so I wanted to go over a couple of points as far as the body cam footage went, and point out a few things within the video. So within the 26-minute clip that I uploaded, about 2 minutes and 20 seconds in, the deputy makes clear, after me asking a question to him, he makes clear that Osceola doesn't provide written trespass notices. So this is one thing. This is, for one, it was a reasonable question for me to ask. Like I said, in other counties and other areas within Florida, I've dealt with trespasses before, and the deputies or the city police officers have always provided a written notice of trespass, so that if a person returns after receiving that written notice, then they would be in direct violation of that trespass order. So I don't think that it was unreasonable in any way for me to ask such a question. And it also doesn't make sense to me that they don't do that. I'm not sure that that's even in fact the case, but that's nonetheless what the deputy stated. So we went with that. About a few seconds after that, Deputy Jimenez also made it clear that we were not obligated to provide ID. This is a very important thing because this also means that the deputy doesn't have any reasonable suspicion that we're committing a crime, meaning he has no powers of detention, and he doesn't have any power to request identification from us, making it legally obligated for us to provide identification to him. It also makes clear that there's also no probable cause for the deputy to make an arrest and charge me with a crime, and it clearly reflects the fact that we're all free to leave and that the deputy has no legal authority. So next, around 3 minutes 25 seconds into the video, as I walk away from the deputies, he starts to talk with me, and I pause merely just to listen to what the deputy is saying to me. The deputy makes it clear that we're not under arrest and we're free to leave. And he also makes clear that he's not interested in any conversation and that we just need to leave. Now, I'm just listening to what he's saying to me, which is merely the reason that I stopped. Otherwise, I would have kept walking. I wasn't just going to walk away as he was talking to me. He engaged me in conversation, so I'm sitting there listening to him. As he's engaging me in this conversation, while at the same time stating to me that he's not interested in any conversation, he then tries to claim that I'm in violation of trespass merely because I hadn't left yet, as I'm standing there just listening to him talk to me. So I can see just how unprofessional the deputy is being and his demeanor and whatnot. So I'm not. Alright, you guys, sorry about the brief cutout there. My camera died on me. So getting back to what I was saying, because of the agitated state of the deputy, and I could see his unprofessionalism, at that point I merely just made a decision to just break contact and walk away from the deputy, since he was basically trying to state that me merely standing there listening to him talk to me was, putting me in violation of a crime. So I said, okay, I'm not dealing with a reasonable deputy or a reasonable person here. I need to just go ahead and walk away from this guy because he's not interested in any kind of civil conversation whatsoever. So like I said, I continue to proceed to walk away, go towards my personal belongings, like the deputy asked for us to go ahead and gather up and pack up so we can leave. Another thing that I want to point out is that the deputy in his report states that that I was 100% right and that he can't do anything, because we aren't committing any crime, any criminal offense, unless we were to refuse to leave. Something that I personally never did. No one ever, none of the other friends of mine did. All of us made clear to the deputy that we were leaving, that we were going to gather our things and part ways. So that's key to know, because that's also one of the elements of the crime as far as trespass goes. You have to actually refuse to leave, somewhere that you are not wanted in order to be in violation of a criminal trespass. The next thing is that the deputy, I want to point out one very key thing in the conclusion of the deputy's report. He says that based on the location of my vehicle and the direction that I am walking away from my vehicle, this places me in violation of trespass. That's a key statement to pay attention to, because as you'll see in the body cam footage, my buddy Julio actually pulls around once the deputies have already placed me into the back of the patrol vehicle and made the arrest. My buddy pulls around and says to the deputy, "Hey, can you guys secure my vehicle as it's being left out there in the open?" And the deputy asked, "Which vehicle is mine?" This is key because the deputies don't know that I had a vehicle there. They don't know how I got there. I didn't volunteer that information and giving them what vehicle was mine or anything like that. So the deputy tries to use as a basis for my arrest and tries to establish probable cause, on this basis, that I walked away from my vehicle, basically reflecting no intent to leave whatsoever. This, of course, which is false. One, it's false because the deputy made the arrest before he knew the location of my vehicle. He absolutely doesn't know that I have a vehicle or the location of my vehicle, but yet he uses that as the basis in his report, which reflects that he's just trumping this stuff up together after the fact, clearly showing that it's a baseless arrest and there was no probable cause to make the arrest in the first place. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to point out as a part of the arrest was when the deputy actually placed me into the vehicle, and I was there for over 4 hours waiting for the sergeant and waiting for them to book me into the jail. I merely requested to speak to a sergeant so that the sergeant could safely secure my concealed carry firearm in a safe manner, since the deputies failed to do so, placing my life in danger. But also, as a result of the arrest, because I was placed into the back of the vehicle and they had me back there for such an unreasonable amount of time, for over 4 hours, handcuffed behind my back, sitting back there, I suffered numbness and nerve damage in my fingers and my hands that I still feel even a couple months later after the arrest, due to being placed behind the vehicle for so long, handcuffed. Another thing that I want to point out is that the deputy decides while I'm in the vehicle to lecture me and belittle me as I'm a member of retired law enforcement. You know, the deputy doesn't like the fact that I'm a retired law enforcement officer and decides to try to belittle me and my law enforcement career. I also think that this reflects the level of unprofessionalism on a part of the deputy, as he's in uniform himself trying to belittle other law enforcement officers. It also was completely uncalled for. If that is his personal opinion, you know, it's one that he should keep to himself and not be expressing openly while on duty, on the job, and in uniform, trying to belittle other law enforcement officers. So that's just another thing that I wanted to point out that you will see reflected within the some of the body cam and vehicle footage. Alright, you guys, so in closing, you know, be careful out there. You know, you definitely will come across you know, these poorly trained law enforcement officers that have the wrong temperament and attitude and training for the job. They shouldn't be out there. I'm certainly not one of these defund the police or anti-police person. Anybody that knows me and knows my my career and everything knows that I'm a very big proponent of law enforcement, but I'm also a very big proponent of cops and police and officers out there on the job doing the job correctly. So keep your eyes open and do what you can when you run into these situations. Unfortunately, they do happen in life. You know, things happen, but you know, when someone in a government capacity does the wrong thing, you know, you need to hold them accountable. So, hey, stay safe, you guys. All right, take care. Bye.